Unmasked Agenda. My name is Cliff. I'm your friendly neighborhood agitator, and we have a great show for you. Well, we always bring you great shows here on Rainier Avenue Radio, and we'll continue to do so in the near future. And now, I would like to bring on my guest for this week, Miss Erica C. Barnett, a very award-winning, well-renowned veteran local journalist. And fun fact, someone that actually, when I was at the Emerald, trained me on how to do journalism. So, and also you may read her blog, Publicola. Daniel, let's bring in our guest. Erica.
Hello. Can you hear me? I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I love the bookcase behind you.
Oh, yeah, thanks. We've got way too many books and not enough bookshelves over here.
Yeah, no, that is a very real problem. I have the same at my new place, and it's, yeah, what can I say? I kind of have read myself into a corner, but don't. But it's great to have you on, and recently you just didn't you just do a panel with Brian Callahan?
Yes, we did. I was on a panel for the, I'm going to get the name wrong, but like a group of PR, the PR Society, talking about how to make pitches and how not to make pitches.
Yeah, that is something I can constantly use a refresher on. And actually, fun fact, Brian is a friend of the show. We've had him on before because actually I saw an episode of what was it, Seattle Inside Out, where you did like the end year review, and that gave me the idea. It's like, well, why have Brian and a few folks on? So, like your influence is really felt throughout Seattle and civic affairs, and I know that. But for our audience, can you tell us a little bit more about your career? Was it been like almost 2 decades at this point?
I see veteran on my description, and I'm I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but yeah, it's actually been more than 2 decades. So I have been in Seattle since 2001. I worked for alt weeklies for a while. Came here from Austin, Texas, and worked for the Seattle Weekly and the Stranger, and then started Publicola with my co-founder Josh Fite, who is also at the Stranger, and you probably know that name. And so we started that in 2009. So I've been doing Publicola on and off, but mostly on since then. So for about 16 years now.
Yeah, no, I would definitely. I feel like veteran is definitely a good descriptor. Given your over 2 decades career at this point, and recently, some of your coverage got a lot of pushback in community, particularly around the downfall of Seattle Office of Civil Rights Director Derrick Wheeler-Smith. And I was just wondering if you expected some of that pushback. And also, just for a point of information, is he on leave or has he resigned already?
Yeah, so he is on leave. He is actually was on FMLA, which is Family Medical Leave Act, to take care of his mother, which I am just saying, I mean, that's kind of private information, but it's out there. He is under fire. Just to really quickly summarize my story, there was a letter that went out from the union that represents his employees at the Office of Civil Rights at the City of Seattle, calling for him to resign. And it was, based on a lot of allegations from staff that he had engaged in discrimination and anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and a bunch of other stuff. So for my story, I talked to I've since realized I've been saying around a quarter. It's actually more like 30% of the staff, and they told me about their concerns directly. So, to answer your question, did I expect pushback? Absolutely. I was very, very ready for that because I know it's a controversial subject, and for the Office of Civil Rights to be accused of civil rights violations is going to be controversial no matter what. But he was also a Bruce Harrell appointee and had a lot of allies in the Bruce Harrell camp, and so I got a ton of pushback. But I was expecting it. I was ready for it.
So I mean, just like kind of breaking down some of that pushback. I know on Cairo 97.3 FM, and this was what kind of escalated it for folks that are listening. After you published the story, um, Angela Rye, she's nationally known, but also very much connected to Seattle, not just through her father, Eddie Rye, who was an ally of Bruce Harrell, still is, as well as well, she was on the show, the G and Ursula show, and she referred to your coverage of this really concerning story as gossip, and insinuated you paid like 30,000 to the mayor or something like that. How would you? And to be clear, not direct paid. She referenced then candidate Katie Wilson, now mayor's campaign finance reports, just to clarify for the folks who might be listening. So how would you respond to this? Like, how do you feel?
Well, I mean, when I am very used to being called a gossip blogger. It is something that, some version of that has been said about me and many, many, many women going back, generations. Every time we do serious coverage and investigative coverage, which this is, or really any kind of coverage. I mean, people call me a gossip blogger. It's a sexist term to denigrate women. And so, I'm used to that. It's just a dumb insult. But the thing about paying Katie Wilson $30,000, I did respond to right away because it's a lie. Now, it may be a misconstrual or a misunderstanding of the way campaign finance reports work. But Katie Wilson, before she was even a candidate for mayor or politician in any way, she was also, an activist and a writer. She was the head of the Transit Writers Union. And she wrote a lot. She wrote for me. She wrote for The Stranger. She wrote for the Urban, and probably the Seattle Times. Lots of publications. I people who write for me, and professional writers. And she did some excellent reported coverage. Sort of opinion writing, but with a lot of reporting for Publicola. And I paid her. I want to say it was 4 times. It might have been 5. Same way I pay every single writer who does that kind of work for me. So I think I paid her $500 for one piece and then $1,000 each for 3 other pieces. I believe that is the sum total of anything I ever paid her, again, as compensation for her writing. That shows up on campaign finance reports, and you can go and look at her. It's called an F1. It's her financial disclosure. That shows up as income because it is income. And so the income category is 0 or maybe it's $1 to $30,000. So Angela Rye on the show extrapolated that as I paid her $30,000, and she didn't specify what that was for, but it was as payment for writing long before she became a candidate for mayor.
So, okay, so I really want to break this down because I've done that before. I've written for like local like publications and gotten paid for it, right? Not that much at one time, probably, but still, it's income, right? Like you should pay people who are doing work. Very basic. And then 2, when I saw that, I was really kind of taken aback because I respect Angela Rye's work, and I'm kind of confused as to like how someone who knows better, quite frankly, is just gonna like randomly smear someone else like that, right? Like, I mean, it is, in my mind, it's not necessarily. I mean, I don't know if it would pass legal muster that it's as defamation, but it's definitely defamatory. And I don't know. I wonder, why do you think she came at you like that, given the fact that, I mean, she clearly knows better? Like,
oh, I am not going to speculate on that. I have no idea because I don't know her. I mean, she was defending Derrick, who I assume, is somebody that she like is friends with or wants to defend for some reason.
Right.
I understand that impulse, but I mean, as we talked about at the top, like I've been doing this for a long time. My career started in the 90s. I'll stand by it. If I make a mistake, I always correct it. Sometimes people have to tell me, and then I will correct it and note it. I have a corrections policy. And so far, and the story is from, like a month ago now, I have not had any factual corrections to the story whatsoever. And I think that's because, it is the voices of people who have been impacted or say they have been impacted in specific ways, a multiracial, diverse, gender diverse, group of people who, were not going to talk about this until they realized, through organizing with their union, that they were not alone. And so they, were generous with their time with me and spoke to me, and I quoted them saying what their experiences were. So I think that the only way to smear a story like that is to smear me, because otherwise you're just and I do think, there was some talk about, a few disgruntled employees. That was something that I believe Derrick said himself. And I would say, when it's 30% of your employees who are talking to a reporter and all saying, some version of a similar story, I would be worried about that if I was the boss of those people. I mean, I would want to know, like, what can I do different and how can we turn things around? But instead, it's just been this, kind of nonstop smear campaign.
Right, right. And I mean, I will, without going into much detail, because I don't want to kind of recklessly, I don't want to recklessly throw out conjecture, but I remember when the story dropped, and I heard it from several other members of the community who were both surprised, but also they had had certain experiences with the Office of Civil Rights where they didn't see much action or much traction from some of the claims that they make, or claims that others they knew others made in order to try to get those addressed. So they're like, oh, this definitely makes some sense, albeit again, there just to clarify, has there been an investigation launched yet?
There is an investigation ongoing, yeah, and that's happening now.
Yeah, so in that case, we'll have to wait to see what happens with the investigation. But I do want to just, without going into details of what folks shared with you and different things, because I understand you want to make sure those sources are protected. It's, I read your article and I was really disappointed in Cresson, because it sounds like the, non-Black POC, LGBTQIA focused concerns, as well as there were, and he sidelined those concerns, as well as made several inappropriate gestures about women, particularly Black women, in the office. And I'm wondering, why do you think this was allowed to go on as long as it did? Because from what your article articulated, we can't curse on here, but dang, I was really taken aback. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is, it's a hard situation when you have people who are at risk of losing their jobs if they complain. And I think that's always true with whistleblowers. And like I said, they did not say anything. I mean, a lot of these allegations go back years, and they didn't say anything to anybody really until last year. And so I don't want to speculate, but I think the fact that Bruce Harrell lost his grip on power and ultimately lost the election was probably part of the reason that they felt a little more empowered to speak. And I'll just speak to something that, is obviously a big factor in, my own sort of comfort level in talking about this. Like, it is hard to speak out, and understandably so. Like, you want to be very careful about speaking out against somebody who is regarded as, a paragon or a member of the community when you are not part of that community. And a lot of these folks now, there were Black, people that were in this group, but when you are, somebody who is, Asian or Latino or, whatever, like, it is hard to, you don't want to look like, you know what I'm saying? It is a situation where you have to be careful. And I, as a white writer, also have to be careful about that. And I'm very cognizant of that when I was writing the story. Like, I want to, like, dot my I's 10 times and cross my T's 10 times, because there is, a very understandable, perception that a white woman, going after quote unquote a black man, and I think this has come up, in some of the criticism of me, that is a real concern for me. Not the perception, but the possibility that I might be doing that. And so that is one reason I talked to so many people. And it's also a reason that it took so long to write this story, because I did try to be like, not that I'm not careful with every story, but I gave careful consideration to that possibility and that, just the perception that I might have as somebody who is not part of the Black community writing this story. I'm very, very aware of that.
Yeah, and I'll just say something as a Black man who is very much of the community, even though, and I've lived here for about 12 years, as you know. Well, I mean, I'm sure you didn't know the specific number of years, but we've known each other for a long time. And I'll just say, as someone who's been a journalist, who is a policy worker now, who's been organizer, that not all skin folk are kinfolk, right? On the one hand, I'm glad that you raised the point that I have seen Black people gone after and overly scrutinized, especially in positions of power. I mean, we only need to look at the national level about how a Black president basically drove a good portion of America insane, to where they elected a rapist, pedophile, washed up TV show host that literally sank casinos in Atlantic City. Like, I mean, it takes a certain level of financial stupidity to do that. I mean, I've never run a casino. I'm just saying that if I were to have a comic book store right next to Midtown Comics or in the neighborhood in Manhattan, and I went under after like a year or so, I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I should just give up the business shtick. But you get what I'm saying. And but at the same time, there needs to be accountability, because they are, people of power and people who have been granted power. And I hate to be a stereotypical comic book nerd, but with great power comes great responsibility. And particularly with that office, one of the reasons why I was personally crestfallen, just to maybe I'm oversharing a bit, is because I've known so many people who have either had their rights violated or who have had questions about their rights violated when it comes to work, housing, treatment by other people in positions of power, so on and so forth. In the Seattle Office of Civil Rights, again, for those folks who are listening at home, the Seattle Office of Civil Rights, they have a very essential function when it comes to making sure Seattle can be livable for everyone. They investigate various civil rights abuses. They ensure that everyone of various protected classes, whether it be Black or brown folks, LGBTQ folks, homeless people, which in your article you noted, Mr. Wheeler-Smith did not consider homeless people as really a priority at all.
Well, they removed them as a protected class, essentially, which had been, a priority of the prior SOCR director. Was to investigate civil rights filed on behalf of or by homeless people.
Yeah, and one of the unfortunate realities is that a lot of unhoused folks are vulnerable, not just to having their rights violated, because in many cases they can't fight back and they don't have the resources to do so, but also unfortunately because, in my opinion, it has become fashionable to smear and to denigrate the unhoused in this city pretty casually. And yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh, and I just want to say, I mean, to go a little bit into the specific concerns by non-Black POC folks, or on behalf of, I mean, ICE raids are obviously a huge issue right now, and the Office of Civil Rights, really, and Derrick Wheeler-Smith and his deputy. I mean, what I heard over and over again was like, we were just told this isn't a priority. And, I mean, I'm Latino. My birth mother is Mexican. And so I look at that and I'm like, well, you know, we can hold many truths in our head at the same
Yes,
time. Like we can consider like the rights of Asian Americans, in a time of xenophobia, and we can consider the rights of LGBTQ plus folks, in a time of massive transphobia, and on and on and on. Like it doesn't have to be one thing or the other. And I think a lot of people just really felt like other groups were getting sidelined in a way that didn't feel necessary or appropriate. And I would say particularly LGBTQ folks because, of just
yeah,
both, Mr. Wheeler-Smith's past associations with an anti-LGBTQ group that he worked for, called World Vision, and then just comments that were made, and people who felt they didn't get accommodated in the way that they were, had a right to.
indeed. And I could go on an hour,
Yeah.
and I know we don't have that long, but I could go on an hour about how anti-blackness is linked to all of these things. Like, you're absolutely correct. All of these things can be all these things can be important. We can hold many truths at once. And in my mind, that solidarity, like the actual practice of solidarity, involves standing against multiple injustices on multiple fronts at once. And like this kind of, in my opinion, as I've shared with friends and various comrades, that ignoring the oppression of one group in order to somehow focus or prioritize the oppression of other groups undermines solidarity and undermines a chance to remedy the needs and the injustices of everyone, in sometimes indirect, but in many ways very direct ways. And in the integrity of the Office of Civil Rights, I would argue, especially in light of ICE raids that do impact Black people, not just Black immigrants, but Black Americans, or quote unquote foundational Americans, whatever you want to call it, like it, these raids violate the rights of people who are not just non-citizens, but also citizens. And, again, I can go on an hour of that, but I do want to, just before we go to break in a few minutes, it seems like there's this residual tension. This has come up again and again in our conversation between those who approved of the former administration and the current one. How do you think, is that something that you've observed? And how do you think Mayor Wilson's trying to close that gap while also addressing concerns from her left flank about sweeps and surveillance? Because there's a town hall tomorrow, right?
Yeah, there's a town hall on Friday night, at 6 o'clock at Town Hall Seattle about the surveillance cameras that are coming. And to answer your question, I mean, I think she is trying to close the gap by, and I don't know how effective it is, to be honest, particularly with the left. But I
Yeah,
think she's trying to move judiciously, and on both appointments to the heads of various departments, and by just keeping a lot of the previous administration's people in place. I mean, not to go back to this Cairo interview, but one of the things that Angela Rye was mentioning was that Katie Wilson has appointed her own department directors, and this was sort of she was describing this as a point of outrage that she would do this.
yeah,
And she listed several department directors or several departments. But I mean, of course, that's the prerogative, and every single mayor does it, and Bruce Harrell did it, and all of that. But I think if anything, she has been, extremely judicious. She has kept Bruce Harrell's police chief, for example.
right.
She backed down when there was a lot of pushback on her decision to fire the city light director and hire somebody that she wanted in there. And now that's up in the air again because of pushback. So, I mean, I think she has really moved very slowly a lot of stuff. And I think that it is kind of working with people who are maybe more in the business community and a little more on the conservative side, because they're,
Mhm.
they expected her maybe to be like a wild-eyed radical, and she's not. But I think on the left, I mean, people are pretty pissed at her about the surveillance camera stuff. And I think tomorrow's town hall, I'm going to go, and I think it's going to be really interesting because people are quite angry on one side of this.
For
So
sure. And
yeah.
one of the things that and before we go to break, just to clarify for folks at home, I believe, and maybe I'll double check, unless you might know. It seems like that town hall might already be sold out, because I remember getting tickets for that, and it blew up really quickly.
Oh, it might be. I don't know for sure, but I also got tickets really, really quickly because I thought it might. Town Hall is not like a huge venue,
Right.
but yeah, it's going to be packed.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd imagine there will probably be some protests or, some like tougher questions. And I'm wondering whether or not people will be satiated by her more judicious and careful approach when she really breaks it down. Because I get, from a policy perspective, I get what she's doing. That she's trying to assess whether or not they actually have provided, whether or not they've actually provided a value add, and identifying ways that negative impacts could be mitigated. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm against surveillance. The expansion of the surveillance state is not something I am ever going to be a fan of. But these cameras have also only been in place for 9 months, and I think it is very easy to take people into the real-time crime center and show them, the map that you can move around, and you can go to a camera and zoom in and pan around everywhere, and it looks like really impressive. And
Right.
the question is, like, I mean, you can't prove a negative, really. So the police will say, we use this camera here to solve this crime. But I mean, they were solving crimes, or not solving them, well before cameras were implemented. And there are cameras, private cameras all over the city already. And that's what they've used in the past. So I don't know. I mean, I think she's getting snowed a little bit here, but I think she's also trying to please everybody a little bit as well. And that's just not going to happen.
Exactly. I know a lot of folks on the left that when I talk to them about this, and I mean, again, people that know me know where my politics lie. This is a leftist podcast, or at least I try to be, I guess. It's no secret, but like, still, there is that, like, there is what's the word I'm looking for? There is that frustration from a lot on the left. I would absolutely agree. But before we go on a bit too long, let's take a bit of a break. You are listening to the Unmasked Agenda here on Rainier Avenue Radio. My guest, Miss Erica C. Barnett, is going to come right back. And now we are going to a commercial break. Oh, by the way, before we do, if you are on Venmo, look for at Rainier Avenue Radio or online at rainieravenueradio.world/donate. And throw us a little coin so we can continue this amazing, this amazing show and maintain this community-run, community-led station. And also remember, Earth Day is coming up. And even though it deserves more than a day, and we are looking at doing a week of environmental justice programming from April 20th to April 25th. And we will also be on in that time. So stay tuned.
No, you can't get enough of Rainier Avenue Radio. .world.
Buying a home isn't just a purchase, it's a legacy move. Maybe you're just starting your home ownership journey, or maybe you're a homeowner who's fallen behind on your mortgage, property taxes, or HOA dues. Wherever you are on your path, Washington Home Ownership Resource Center connects you to trusted guidance every step of the way. Vetted resources, trusted referrals, real support. If home ownership is your goal, or you're trying to protect the home you already have, don't face it alone. Visit homeownership-wa.org or call the Home Ownership Hotline at 877-894-4663 today. The Washington Home Ownership Resource Center, educating and empowering future and current homeowners in Washington State.
The Wellspring of Life brings to you freedom, life, peace, joy, breakthroughs, miracles, salvation, hope, and much more. The life that Jesus Christ brings to humanity. Listen to Rainier Avenue Radio every Friday at 1 p.m. with Pastor Johnny Goroya.
Hey y'all, it's Traffic Jam with Kareem.
Thursday at 4 p.m.
Hey, Traffic Jam. Rain Avenue Radio, download the app so you don't miss out what's popping with Crack with Shiny. It's your boy, Dream the Dream, on another beautiful week on here on Traffic Jam in Seattle. I hope you guys do what you're supposed to do, being you're supposed to be. I got a good show for y'all, a lot to talk about. You know, Kareem the Dream, keep up with everything.
Get your entertainment news with Kareem on the Traffic Jam, Thursday at 4 p.m.
Generational wealth. Generational wealth. Generational wealth. What is generational wealth? We asked our communities.
See lots of people who've gotten rich quickly and gotten poor just as quickly and left nothing to their families and or the community. That's a big chunk of the piece that needs to change. We need to see people making their investment in their families and in themselves and in the community. We want to build all three of those elements. We want to establish long-lasting family and community wealth, not just people who've gotten rich and squandered it. Those who have wealth will be opposed to our breaking the status quo, so this will be a struggle. All those folks are used to how things have been for hundreds of years, and that's the piece that needs to change, and they need to be able to stand by.
This campaign to create awareness to generational wealth is brought to you by the Department of Neighborhood's Generational Wealth Initiative, the Washington Housing Finance Commission, and Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and on Twitter at Rainier Ave Radio.
Awesome. And we are back. Hello, fellow neighborhood agitators. You are listening to the Unmasked Agenda here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. And I am Cliff, your friendliest neighborhood agitator, and I'm being joined by Miss Erica C. Barnett. And again, if you are not familiar with Erica's work, check out Publicola and or the Seattle Nice podcast, which is a very nice podcast. So I'm sorry, I am every Thursday. It's just corny jokes all the time.
Love it.
Right on. So yeah, let's switch. So let's.
I love the half-second late soundboard.
You're okay. Like quite literally, as I was like transitioning, bring you in, I almost I forgot for a beat. I was like, wait, okay, what do I say? Oh, that's right. Bring the guest back. Yep, bring her back. So I want to switch gears for a second because there's not just local drama going on. There's some national drama besides, take your pick, the federal government trying to, not trying to, but actually dismantling Department of Education, worsening the student loan situation to a point where if you have any student loans, well, you may as well fake your death and start life over, and good luck to you. I don't know. That's my plan if it gets too crazy, and then somehow they'll bring on a brand new host that you've never seen before who has a new name. But
man, I'm Gen X, so I lucked out. I mean, I just lucked out on every generational thing. I mean, except for being able to own a home. I mean, that the boomers took that away from all of us.
Oh yeah,
but student loans, I managed to get out of pretty unscathed.
That's what's up. See, like I'm just thinking we'll get to a cascading effect to a point where it's like, oh, that these young people aren't going to pay them, not going to buy anything. We can't go after everyone. We can't garnish everyone's wages. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. But the topic of conversation is not that, or the unjust and illegal war in Iran. But I want to talk about HUD for a second, because here in Washington State, in 2023, we did something pretty extraordinary. A first-in-the-nation piece of legislation, which, for transparency, yours truly was involved in when I worked at Habitat, involved in passing, that is, and working with legislators in order to craft it and working with local folks. Shout out to Housing Development Consortium and some of my friends there who I worked with on this, as well as Representative Jamila Taylor. Appreciate you because she was one of the sponsors, as well as the late Speaker Emeritus Frank Chomp, rest in power. It was a covenant home ownership account program. So, Erica, you're familiar with this, right?
Yes.
Okay, so for just very quickly for our listeners at home, so the Covenant Home Ownership Account Program is a program that was set up that passed the legislature in 2023 that provides down payment assistance and closing cost assistance for those who would have been impacted by racially restrictive covenants. So for those who are named in these covenants that would be on the deeds of a home throughout not just Seattle, but throughout the state of Washington. And this tool was used throughout the nation to prevent people of color, Jewish folks, anyone that was considered less than desirable from owning homes. In addition to the tools, the very infamous tool at this point of redlining. Our state created a fund where those individuals and their descendants, because this practice robbed people of generational wealth and the capacity to build it, with down payment assistance and closing costs so they can own a home. And at this point, if I remember correctly, it's created, I think it's way past 200 at this point. I forget the exact number, but hundreds, if not thousands, of people have benefited from this program already. And HUD has now launched an investigation based on the accusation that that program violates fair housing laws. And even though this program has survived legal challenges on a state level, it has now received this federal scrutiny. And I know I've talked a lot to set that up, but I'm just wondering, Erica, what's your take on this? And do you think the federal administration has the juice to strike this program down?
Yeah, well, just real quick, I'm looking at a story in the Washington State Standard, and it's covering a year from July 2024 to June 2025. They say that it served over 500 households. So do they have the juice? God, I mean, they don't have like a valid argument. I mean, the argument is that it violates the Fair Housing Act, which was designed to obviously stop and prevent and address discrimination in housing. That discrimination was not against white people, but the Trump administration is basically trying to retcon the Fair Housing Act and say that providing this covenant homeownership program to the descendants of people who were affected by redlining and gentrification is discrimination. I mean, I don't know if they're explicitly saying this, but basically they're saying it's discrimination against white people. And, you know,
they're writing it. They're writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, you said we can't cuss on this program, but obviously that's BS. I mean, it's not a valid argument. It's not in keeping probably, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but with precedent on the Fair Housing Act. But I think they'll certainly try, and they've just got to get a judge who will agree with them. Now, they haven't been completely successful in, all of their ridiculous efforts to overturn, settled law and settled precedent. So it's possible that they'll prevail, but I mean, by any legal standard, they should not, because they don't have a case.
Absolutely. And, something to note is that in the, same, I believe it's a Fair Lending Act, maybe, or it might actually be it's either in the Fair Housing Act or Fair Lending Act, but special purpose credit programs are a thing. And again, for those who are at home, special purpose credit programs are basically programs that will allow financial institutions to serve certain populations with a particular financial product that those populations have demonstrated a limited and very specific, very limited and specific need, or have been subjected to a specific harm. And that is part of the legal basis of how this program is structured, right? And, Erica, you bring up a really good point that I hate to be hyperbolic, but that Trump and his allies and his conservative predecessors, and I mean, the Democrats have definitely been not necessarily been a bit complicit in this. Have they basically stacked the deck with a lot of conservative judges, and especially under Trump's administration, there have been a number of judges, and in fact, to kind of relate to our work here in the work that you do every day, one of those the very same high court, the Supreme Court. I mean, this hasn't gone to the Supreme Court yet. Knock on wood. Hopefully it doesn't, but whatever. But the very same Trump appointees, just the other day, they ruled against a local citizen journalist. I believe this, I want to say this was in Texas. I might have been wrong, but who basically recorded an ICE raid, an ICE arrest, and she was brutalized and arrested. I don't know if you heard about this, but the disturbing thing is they ruled that qualified immunity essentially allowed them to avoid scrutiny.
Because they're basically cops, and so they can they have immunity from prosecution in some sense.
Yeah, precisely. And I mean, anyway, so I mean,
they're trying to overturn the entire Voting Rights Act, So I mean, it is a scary time, and we can't take anything for granted, including the validity, or not the validity, but the the sanctity or whatever of local laws. So I mean, I'm surprised that up here in Washington we got the attention of the Trump administration while they were so busy brutalizing people in other states. But yeah, I mean, it's a scary time to be in the crosshairs.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about the forum tomorrow at 6 at Town Hall, and so I was wondering. I know you said you weren't a fan. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more, since we're talking about civil rights, on what's the deal with this whole discourse around security cameras providing public safety, and from the left, if you could break down the kind of discourse against Mayor Wilson around her decision to halt the program, but only pause it, not completely get rid of all the cameras.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good faith reading of the argument for cameras, particularly from impacted communities, as opposed to the business community, which I mean, of course, are for cameras, is that there has been sort of a lack of emphasis on solving gun crimes, on solving violent crimes, and just paying any attention at all to minority neighborhoods, to low income neighborhoods, just to all the parts of the city that have been neglected by not just human services, not just infrastructure, not just the transportation department fixing sidewalks, but also by police. And so I think there is an argument that if we had things like cameras and ShotSpotter, which was the gunshot locator system, then the police could actually more easily solve crimes, and also potentially that the cameras would deter crimes because people would know that there were cameras and that they were being watched. That is the argument, as good faith as I can present it, because I do not agree with that argument. I think, as I mentioned before, there are lots of cameras in commercial areas already, and that's where these cameras are mostly going to be. Those commercial areas happen to also be areas where people live, and so they will be, on people who live in the Central District, in Capitol Hill, assuming these cameras get turned on, and in whatever other areas they expand them to in the future. I think the left is arguing largely that, there's a couple of arguments. One that I am particularly compelled by is, about the surveillance state. I think the fact that we are surveilled all the time, which Mayor Wilson brought up in her press conference about this, I think that's totally irrelevant. This is surveillance by police, and that is different. It is just different to say we're going to give police this tool, because police are the ones that have to meet a higher level of scrutiny. And in my mind, I mean, I think they have to do better than the Quickie Mart or whatever that happens to have a camera on. And they have been shown, and we're under consent decree for 12 years for bias policing, for, over policing, for arresting the wrong people. And so, the police have said that these cameras have helped them arrest 300% more people. And I look at that and I'm like, yeah, I remember when, when there was a real backlash against using that as a positive metric, because what that typically means is it's a lot of false arrests, and it's a lot of racial profiling. So I'm not personally comforted by that kind of statistic. But yeah, I mean, I think the other argument on the left is that is that ICE and DHS and the federal government can get this information, which they absolutely can, because all they have to do is file a subpoena, and if the footage exists still, they can get it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can get it through a public records request. Like you or I can file a public records request and say, I want, all the camera footage for this hour from this camera, and they have to preserve it. So
exactly.
They don't delete if you file a records request. So it's kind of a disingenuous, claim that, we delete all the footage anyway, so it doesn't matter.
It's like, no, it definitely matters. It exists, and somewhere, and one of the things that I think a lot of people forget is, even if it's like not online, as in on a website that one can access, if it's digital, it exists. It's going to exist forever, right? In some form, even if it's on a secure server. And one of the things that I saw raised a while ago is that if it depends on, well, not depends, but it could be used by nefarious parties if they file a public records request, right? It could be used to harass folks, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, for the folks who are concerned about surveillance, that has led to racial profiling, by police. I've seen numerous instances around the country where security cameras have been used in order to justify over policing, been used in order to basically try to frame people. And like you said, the police, they need a higher level of scrutiny. I will say, as someone that teaches part-time, the fact that my colleagues and I have a higher level of scrutiny than police in many cases is just weird. It is just bad priorities. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the World Cup, because it's coming up, I think, this summer.
You've come to the right place, the ultimate sports fan.
Oh, nice. Well,
I'm joking, right?
I mean, for a second there, I was like, oh, I didn't know Erica was into it like that, because I was about to say, tell me if I have been wrong by being disappointed by the Sounders offense. That is a side question I had just now. I was like, have I been wrong?
No, I get endless endless mockery for my my ignorance of sports.
Oh yeah, no, I am that nerd. Video games, comic books, films. I can nerd out with Ryan Coogler about aspect ratios all live long day, and and color grading in films and all sorts of stuff. Ask me about how a box score works. But
ask me what a box score is. Anyway, World Cup. It's exciting. Yeah, it's coming.
Exactly. So in the past, I think something that has been overlooked is how, preparing for these major sport events impacts the most. Hey, how you doing? And we have some guests in the audience in person, so I always love it. Hope you're well. So it always impacts a lot of vulnerable people, whether it's a World Cup, whether it is the Super Bowl. And I'm just wondering, what do you think the city should be doing to mitigate the impact of the most vulnerable people, whether it is very low income folks, whether it is homeless folks, whether it's folks that live in proximity to the stadium? I mean, the CID has had a long history of fighting for justice when it comes to developing near the stadium district, and particularly with the old saga of the Kingdom. But anyway, I'll stop talking. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point about the CID. I mean, I think one thing that happened during the All-Star game was that, and has happened a lot of times in the CID, is that people and business owners there feel like all the attention goes to Pioneer Square, the attention of the city, and kind of promoting Pioneer Square as a place to go after the game. And the CID has historically gotten overlooked. So, I mean, I think one thing the city could be doing right now is really trying to beef up promotion and access to the CID, through making it, whether it's like creating paths from downtown through to the stadiums that that highlight the CID, which they did during the All-Star game. They had sort of here's how you walk through downtown, and it was like avoiding all the kind of places where unsheltered people hang out, but also kind of skirting by the CID completely. And so I think they need to really work to avoid doing that again, because that is an injustice. And of course, I think don't turn the cameras on, don't install them, but that's a losing battle, because they are going to install them, and I suspect they will turn them on, even though Mayor Wilson is saying now that they're going to install them but not turn them on unless there's a credible threat. We'll see. There's a lot of pressure on her. And then, and I think Mayor Wilson is doing one thing that I think could potentially have a really big impact, which is building a lot of shelter. A lot of times what has happened historically is that homeless folks get swept aside. They get sort of boxed out of a boundary, around the stadium where any visitors might see them, so that we can pretend like we don't actually have a homelessness crisis here, so that the rest of the world will go away with the impression that we do not have homeless people in Seattle. Right. And so, I mean, I think providing shelter to as many people as possible who are going to be, in the downtown area or who are currently in the downtown area is a really good first step. And I hope that, that there is some emphasis on actually sheltering folks instead of sweeping them like we always do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, Mayor Wilson says that the first shelter should come online in April. So I'm really happy that we're leaning towards shelter rather than sweeping people around. And one thing, you kind of alluded to this, is Councilmember Bob Kettle has really been putting a lot of pressure on the mayor to turn on the cameras because of so-called potential credible threats. I don't know, how credible it is going to be, especially. Well, I mean, you never want to say for sure in this age, especially of like white right-wing, conservative fundamentalists, like pro-fascist domestic terrorism. We've seen it all around the country. Knock on wood. I hope nothing happens. But I want to say it was a march a few years back, I think during May Day, and this might have been 2020, where leaders in the CID urged protesters, instead of just like marching through, to try to like spend money at local businesses. Do you think maybe that's something that Mayor Wilson might want to, take up, to say, hey, go next door? They're amazing restaurants, they're amazing businesses. I mean, let alone like Fort George, brilliant karaoke, and fingers crossed soon Busch Garden will be back.
Yeah, I mean, I hope she does, because I do think that, if people are coming to the World Cup from elsewhere, from around the country and around the world, I mean, they should see our CID, the Chinatown International District, and and not just Pioneer Square, which I think is, I mean, Pioneer Square is great. My office is there. I'm there, several times a week. But I mean, it's Gastown in Vancouver. It's there's a lot of parts of cities that are like that. I think our Chinatown is a little more interesting and unique. Personally, that's where I would, where I hang out more than Pioneer Square. So yeah, I hope so. And if there's a credible threat, having those cameras on is not going to do anything. Fortunately, people have cameras on their phones. So if ICE comes, people I think are ready and eager to film. So I don't think we need those cameras.
Absolutely. I would argue that ICE, especially to the American people, to the everyday Seattleite, regardless of citizenship or, background, that ICE is a greater threat than, any imagined, terrorist. That being said, no, don't want to downplay security concerns, but that being said, I do want to end, because we're almost at time, on one thing, and I feel like you really enjoy this, but I was reading Josh Fate's contribution to Publicola recently on a French Revolution concentration of wealth that hands the ultra wealthy, aka metro renters, and I just wanted your thoughts on that, because like the 99% are not doing well, and I'm wondering, like, do you think that even that we had this leftward sweep in the elections, do you think that energy's still coming back on the street?
Yeah, so people should go read this piece in Publicola. It's called Maybe Metropolis, French Revolution Vibes, and it's about the Downtown Seattle Association's kind of, here's who our downtown consumers are, and they're all just these sort of scary sounding groups of consumers that are, it's pretty generic categories, but it makes it sound as though downtown is like, only for the ultra rich. And his piece is like kind of tongue in cheek, but the divide between regular people and, whoever the hell the Downtown Seattle Association thinks its target audience is pretty vast. So, we should be less worried about millionaires leaving the city than about the growing gap between them and everybody else. And I think I think people should just read it and laugh along with it, because it's pretty funny.
Hey, what's a revolution without dancing, without laughs, right? Viva. That being said, Erica, I really appreciate you joining us tonight, and I hope to have you come back soon for who knows, maybe we'll do another year-end roundup. You don't know, I don't know, we'll see. But
have me on to talk about sports some more. The people love that.
We could, or do our own Oscar roundup, because I'm telling you right now, I've seen Project Hail Mary recently, and that gets an A+, or as they may do in it. People know the joke behind the thumbs down, but it was genuinely 2, maybe 5 thumbs up. And with that, thank you very much, Erica. I appreciate you. Thanks, is
Cliff.
Unmasked Agenda. We will return. Going back to our every 2-week cadence in April, and we'll have more interesting shows and announcements for all of you in due time. Again, thank you to Miss Erica C. Barnett for joining us. Check out Publicola, check out Seattle Nice Podcast. This has been the Unmasked Agenda here on Rainier Avenue Radio. Stay righteous and stay courageous.